ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول كل بدعة ضلالة.
However, this ibadah of Allah and this dua, whether it be dua ul-ibadah or whether it be the dua ul-mas'ala, meaning whether it be the supplication of worshipping Allah such as salah and fasting and zakah and birrul walidain, being kind to one's parents and being dutiful to them, whether it be the dhikr that one makes upon the tongue or the recitation of the Quran, that there are 4 conditions, or whether it be the seeking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something and you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to respond by giving you that which you have asked for. And this comes under 4 headings or 4 conditions, as Shaykh Muhammad bin Saleh al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala has mentioned. The first condition is sincerity, that one must sincerely and purely direct his supplication to Allah alone, without committing shirk, without seeking riyah, without doing it for riyah, without wanting to show off to the people, and without sum'ah, without seeking notoriety or to be heard by the people. So he must not worship to show off to the people or to seek fame. He must not perform hajj, for example, so that he wants others to say, MashaAllah Haji, Al-Hajj, shuf. Look at this person who has performed hajj. And he should not give in charity for the purpose of wanting the people to say to him or say about him, look, mashallah, generous, bounteous, that he gives, that he's bountiful. And he should not fast so that the people may say about him, look how often this person is always fasting, mashallah. So he becomes pleased. So now the acts of worship that he's doing them because of the pleasure of the people and notoriety amongst the people. And he wants fame in front of the people to show off to the people. If one performs his deeds seeking praise from the people, then that deed that he does in seeking praise from the people is nullified, invalidated. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept it from him. And of course, if the deed itself at its root is for other than Allah, then all of his deeds are not accepted. Like the deeds of the munafiqeen, then none of the deeds of the munafiq is accepted from the beginning till its end. Because at the very root of it is that it isn't for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he does it to show the people. Right from the root, he hates Islam in his heart. That's the munafiq. Or the one who directs his worship to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That his ibadah is for the dead one in his grave. Or his ibadah is for the idols. Or for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then of course his deeds are not accepted. As for the one who worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he gets caught up in riyah sometimes, then the deed in which he gets caught up in riyah, seeking other than for that particular deed, seeking the praise of the people, then that particular deed is not accepted from him. As for the rest of the deeds that are done for Allah, then they are accepted from him. So when one supplicates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he should be sincere, have ikhlas, purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second condition is that the supplication must not contain any sin or transgression. If the dua is sinful, then it will not be accepted by Allah. So even when a father supplicates against his own children, or the mother supplicates against her own children, if it is a supplication that within it there is itham and udwan, there is sin and transgressing the bounds, then Allah will not accept that dua. Allah does not accept the supplications that transgress against others. Ud'u rabbakum tadarru'an wa khufiyatan innahu la yuhibbul mu'tadin. Call upon your Lord in humility and in secret. Indeed, he likes not those who transgress beyond bounds. So it is from the sunnah, my brothers and sisters, that when you supplicate to Allah, you do so in humility and humbleness. You are humble before your Lord, and that you do not transgress the bounds. Transgressing the bounds is that you ask for something sinful, or that you wish to oppress someone, or take the haqq of someone, and then you ask Allah to help you in that sin. That dua is not accepted. So if a person supplicates seeking something sinful, such as asking for a thing that is prohibited in Islam. So you ask, for example, oh Allah, I've applied for a mortgage. And you know very well that that mortgage is based upon interest and usury. But you want Allah to aid you and facilitate that mortgage for you. Then that dua is not accepted. Or that you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, he brings the example. If one was to ask Allah, oh Allah, make me a prophet, then this is not permitted. That dua is not permitted. And that dua is transgressing beyond bounds. And it is not accepted by Allah. If a person was to supplicate against one he has oppressed, it will not be accepted. Oh Allah, aid me against fulan. Yeah, you are the one who oppressed fulan. So you make dua against the one who is madhloom at your hands, the one who is oppressed at your hands, and you want Allah to aid you against the one that you oppressed. That dua is not accepted. If a mother was to supplicate against her own son because he loves his wife, it will not be accepted. If a father was to supplicate against his own son because his son accompanies the pious and the good people, and he makes dua to Allah, oh Allah, keep my son away from those people, and he makes dua against his own son because his son is in the company of the righteous and the pious, then that dua is not accepted. So the supplication must not contain a request to sin or to transgress the bounds of the Sharia. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in a hadith reported by Imam Muslim, a person's supplication will be answered provided he does not ask for that which is sinful or the severing of family ties, and he must not be hasty and impatient. And he was said to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, what is this isti'jal? What is this impatience and hastiness with regard to dua? The Prophet ﷺ said that the person says that I supplicated, but I do not think my supplication was answered. So he becomes disappointed and abandons supplicating altogether. A person should never reach that stage, my brothers and sisters. So you ask for that which is good. You do not ask for that which is sinful. So these are two of the four conditions of the dua for it to be answered. And it is important, my brothers and sisters, that we pay heed to these conditions of the supplication so that we are from those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers their dua. Then the third condition that Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah mentioned is that a person should supplicate to Allah whilst being certain of a response. There should not be any shak. And don't be hasty, my brothers and sisters, as we mentioned previously. Don't be hasty. So then, because of your haste, because of your impatience, that you say to yourself, I asked and Allah did not give. So that introduces doubt into your dua. And you do not ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based upon doubt. You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being certain that Allah responds. As Allah said, ask and I will respond. So since He has promised, and Allah does not break His promise, so you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that Allah is the one who responds, and He will respond. Maybe He will not give you exactly what you asked for, maybe He'll give you that which is better. Or maybe Allah will replace it with that which is better. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will save it up for you Yawm al-Qiyamah and give you more in excess, multiplied manifold on Yawm al-Qiyamah. But it is not to be said, my brothers and sisters, I asked and I don't think that Allah will respond. Then you despair. And then you say, why should I make dua? I never get answered. That's your haste. That's your impatience. That's your lack of tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the believer is obligated to have tawakkul in Allah and to believe in Allah and be certain that when you ask of Allah, that Allah indeed responds. So some people, Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen mentioned, Some people supplicate to Allah as if they are trying or attempting to see if it will be accepted or not. So when a person makes dua with that in the back of his mind, I will try, see what happens. Let me make dua to Allah. You never know. Allah may answer. That type of dua, my brothers and sisters, is not the dua that is going to be answered. Because that is a half-hearted dua. It is not a dua that is based upon yaqeen. Since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already said, call upon me and I will answer. So since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already said that you are to call upon Him and He will surely answer. And since He has said that He will answer and He does not break His promises, then why the doubt? Why say to yourself, I'm going to try and see what happens? No harm. Barakallahu feekum. This is not the attitude of the believer. This type of supplication is not answered. Call upon Allah whilst you are certain that He will respond to you. And if you supplicate to Allah whilst you are doubtful, whilst you are in shak, then Allah will not respond to such a supplication. There's a narration wherein the Prophet ﷺ said, ask Allah whilst being sure of His response. And remember that Allah does not accept the supplication of the unmindful and the neglectful heart. So the heart must be alert when he asks Allah, that it calls upon Allah whilst being mindful, attentive, aware, knowing that Allah is the one who responds. So your heart should be sure. Sometimes the shaitan will come and will say to you, you made dua 15, 20 times in the last year. How many times have you had what you asked for? You don't know, my brothers and sisters. Allah answered. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not answer, maybe one of these conditions was missing. Maybe you asked for that which was sinful. Maybe you asked for something, but Allah saves it for you Yawm al-Qiyamah. But since you are in doubt, even that is pulled away from you. And Allah will not answer you, regardless. Because you were in doubt. Or maybe you weren't sincere when you were asking. Maybe you were unmindful when you were asking Allah. When you meet the conditions of dua, Allah surely answers. The fourth condition is that a person must abandon that which is haram, such that he does not eat that which is forbidden. He does not drink that which is forbidden, that which is haram. He does not eat the wealth of the people. He does not consume usury and interest. He should not obtain wealth through trickery or deception and lying, because that becomes a barrier to the dua being accepted. It becomes a means of your dua being rejected indeed. That you eat that which is haram. You consume that which is haram. You consume interest and usury. You obtain wealth through lying and deception. And then you raise your hands to Allah and you expect Allah to answer you? Why should Allah answer a person? In that regard, the Prophet ﷺ stated, أيها الناس إن الله طيب لا يقبل إلا طيبا. That indeed Allah is good and He does not accept except that which is good. And indeed, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ بِمَا أَمَرَ بِهِ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. That verily Allah has commanded the believers with that which He commanded the messengers. And then the Prophet ﷺ said that indeed Allah the Most High said, and then he recited the words of Allah, يَا أَيُّهَا الرُّسُلُ كُلُوا مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَاعْمَلُوا صَالِحًا إِنِّي بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ عَلِيمٌ. That the Prophet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in this ayah from Surah Al-Mu'minun, O messengers. So this address, Allah addresses the messengers. O messengers, eat of the good foods which Allah has made permissible, the tayyibat. Eat of them. Eat of the good food that Allah has made permissible and do righteous deeds. Verily, I am well acquainted with what you do. Then the Prophet ﷺ recited another ayah in which Allah this time addresses the believers. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe. Kulu min tayyibat. Eat of the good and permissible things. Ma razaqnakum. That which Allah has provided for you. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned a man who traveled a long journey such that his hair was disheveled and he was covered with dust. So then he raises his hands towards the sky and he supplicates to Allah, Ya Rabb, Ya Rabb. Yet, as the Prophet ﷺ said, his food is unlawful. His drink is unlawful. His clothes are unlawful. And he is nourished by that which is unlawful. Therefore, how can his dua be accepted? Hadith in Sahih Muslim. So Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned the Prophet ﷺ that he made this man far distant and disqualified him from having his supplication accepted. Even though this man was worthy, because one of those people whom the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that his dua is accepted is a man who is upon a safar. A person when he is upon a journey should increase in supplicating to Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers the dua of the one who is upon a journey. So this one is upon a lengthy journey, as the Prophet ﷺ said. His hair has become disheveled. He is covered in dust because of the journeying. So you would imagine when he raises his hands towards the sky, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is shy at the one who raises his hands, that he should not respond to him and his hands return to him without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answering him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers the dua of the one who raises his hands towards the sky. And he is upon a journey. Yet this one who is upon a journey, his dua is not accepted. Because his food is haram. His drink is haram. His clothing is haram. He sustains himself with that which is haram. And then he says, Ya Rabb, Ya Rabb. My Lord, my Lord. How can he accept his dua to be answered? How can he expect that, my brothers and sisters? Whilst all of that is present. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the one who likes that Allah answer him in the time of adversity and hardship, then let him increase in supplicating to Allah in times of ease. And that is important as well, my brothers and sisters. Those 4 conditions that we mentioned, and being constant in supplicating to Allah. Don't just call upon Allah in times of hardship and you forget Allah in times of ease. So the one, as the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who wants Allah, the one who likes Allah, the one who loves that Allah answers him when he is afflicted in times of hardship, then he should be plentiful in making dua to Allah in times of ease. So do not be, my brothers and sisters, of those who forget Allah when Allah gives them and Allah nourishes them and Allah aids them and Allah gives them ease and tranquility and a comfortable life. They forget Allah. Then when hardship comes, the hands are raised towards the sky. And then they wonder why their dua is not accepted. Because their food is haram. Their sustenance is haram. Their wealth is haram. Or they are not sincere. Or they are uncertain. This dua, my brothers and sisters, is a powerful tool in the hands of the believers. And we should make the most of it. And we should know, as Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned, that surely the one who calls upon Allah with a heart that is alert, a heart that is not neglectful, by a person whose wealth is halal, and he eats that which is halal, and he is sincere to Allah, and he calls upon Allah knowing that Allah answers, that dua will be accepted, my brothers and sisters. So do not be neglectful in that regard. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those whose supplications are answered, and make us from those whose hearts are alert, and make us from those whose tongues are constantly moist with the remembrance of Allah and the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.